In this video, we'll tell you what Amazons look like, why they were so feared in the ancient world, and where you can find the graves of these brave warriors. We'll also check if Amazons really cut off one breast to be more comfortable in a fight. Let's go! Real Amazons. Who are they? Believe it or not, Amazons are not at all a myth. These ancient warriors actually existed, and we are going to prove it to you. To do it, we are going to rely on ancient written sources and archaeologists. What did ancient Greeks and Romans say about Amazons? One of the first mentions of the women warriors goes back to ancient Greek poet Homer's Iliad. A band of women warriors fought for the Trojans, but Achilles managed to kill the Amazons' leader, which disheartened them, and they left the battle. Heracles' labours include a story about the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of Amazons, which was given to her by god of war Ares. The ancient hero had to take the girdle and deliver it to the daughter of King Eurystheus. Even though the Amazon leader was ready to give her girdle to handsome Heracles without any bloodshed, goddess Hera interfered. She tricked the Amazons into attacking Heracles and his people. The best known version of the myth says that the Amazon queen died in the battle and Heracles got the girdle. There are dozens of similar myths and their variations. Ancient Greeks were as big fans of stories about Helenus fighting against the Amazons as we are of Joker versus Batman. The theme of wars against Amazons, Amazonomachi, was one of the most popular themes in ancient Greek art. For instance, part of the giant frieze from the Temple of Apollo at Bassae features an entire cycle of Amazonomachi. Let's take a closer look. Here's an Amazon mid-swing fighting Heracles' men. This Amazon fighting on the Trojan side is in trouble. A Greek managed to grab her by the hair. "Hey, did you leave your helmet behind?" Here we have a tragic scene. Achilles is killing Penthesilea, daughter of Ares and queen of Amazons. Seeing the fallen Penthesilea without a helmet, the brave Greek falls in love with a defeated queen. What a sad ending. They would have made such a lovely couple. We can find out what the Amazons looked like based on the preserved ancient artworks. They mainly wore short clothes, similar to the ones worn in Greece. Sometimes they would wear a Persian man suit, fitting their slim shape. Amazons would often walk and ride horses barefoot, or in short leather boots with ties. They would also wear a cone-shaped hat on their heads, all shipshape and Scythian fashion. Ancient Roman scholar and writer Pliny the Elder pointed out that when Amazon statues were made for the temple of hunting goddess Artemis at Ephesus, great sculptors of their time were competing for the job. There was good reason for this honor. Greek poet Callimachus wrote that it was the Amazons who founded Ephesus in Turkey and erected a statue of Artemis next to a large oak tree. Stories about Alexander the Great mention his meeting with the queen of Amazons, Thalestris. In a letter to his mother, Alexander wrote that Amazonides were much taller than the other women, remarkably beautiful and healthy. According to myths, the Amazons were daughters of god of war Ares and nymph Harmonia. They dwelled on the banks of river Thermodon next to the town of Themiskra. A different version places them on the coast of Lake Meotis, that is the Sea of Azov. To procreate, they would marry foreigners. They gave any boys that were born to their fathers and kept the girls. Just like their fashion, their weapons were quite similar to what we know about Scythian ones: a bow, a battle axe, and a light shield. The most complete story about the warrior women can be found among the works of Herodotus. To put together the Amazons' profile, the renowned historian headed to Olbia, an ancient Greek city whose ruins can still be found in the south of Ukraine. Here is what Herodotus wrote. The word Amazon means no breast. The scholar said that Amazons would cauterize the girl's right breast so it would be easier to shoot a bow and arrow. Yet, as you may have already noticed, the images that have been preserved depict women without any physical peculiarities. According to Herodotus, Scythians called Amazons Oiapata, man-killer. Amazons rode horses, shot a bow and arrow, and lanced darts while on horseback. The women did most work throughout the year themselves, cultivated the land, grew crops, gardened, looked after horses. The strongest ones would go hunting on horseback and train relentlessly. It wasn't even always for military glory. Some of them did it to get married. Many ancient authors claimed that the Amazons could only marry after killing at least 3 enemies. Some of them would stay single until old age, because they failed to deliver on this requirement. Now let's take a look at archaeology. In Scythian times, burying women with weapons was very common in the southern part of Eastern Europe. About 10% of women's graves belong to women warriors. There are rich graves of Scythian queens, but most warrior women came from middle class, so to speak. Anthropological research proves that Amazons were quite similar to the other population of Scythia. The ages of buried women were between 16 and 60, but about half the graves belong to young women. Women warriors' graves mainly date back to the 5th to the mid-4th century BC. The majority of graves were found in prairies near the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov in Ukraine and Russia. The highest number of burial sites, though, was found along the right bank of the Dnieper River, from the rapids to the estuary of the Bazavlak River in Ukraine. Some of the graves were found in completely unexpected places. For instance, in 2017, archaeologists unearthed the grave of a 20-year-old girl in the north of Armenia. She was buried with honors about 2,500 years ago. Judging by the particular development of muscles, she was an archer and rode horses a lot. She was probably shot in the knee in one of her battles, and an arrowhead got stuck in her knee. In her last battle, she fought against several opponents and got 3 injuries with different weapons. Her left leg was nearly cut off. Judging by this find, women warriors didn't have it easy. When it came to actual battles, they would be slayed just the same as men were. Gender equality, ancient wartime style. In December 2019, archaeologists found a grave of women warriors in one of burial hills of Davitsa burial site in Voronezh. The burial site dates back 2,500 years like the previous one. They found 4 women's skeletons in there, 2 young women, a teenage girl, and a woman who was 45 to 50 at the time of death. Next to them, there were buried arrowheads, elements of horse harness, spears, knives, and ceremonial dishes. The forehead of the older Amazon was adorned with a headpiece made from ornate gold plates. One of the women was deliberately buried, positioned as an equestrienne to emphasize the life that she had led. Archaeologists prove what ancient writings tell us. Amazons were armed with bows and arrows. Many of them also used spears and/or darts. Swords were much less common. Amazons hardly ever wore armor or battle girdles, even though the latter are mentioned quite a lot by ancient authors. As you can tell, we can be completely sure that Amazons are not a myth. We know little about them, but there is no denying that they actually existed.